everybody, and welcome to tonight's special stream show start. If it's a little chaotic, then I haven't done this in a while. It's like falling off a bicycle. You get hurt whenever you try. So there you are. Good to see so many of you have joined me for this evening and for this kickoff. Now, we are going to be, over the next 4 weeks, designing a campaign basically from scratch. We've already created one thing, and that is the singular idea, the what-if idea. I'm going to take that and we're going to expand that tonight whilst we're doing that. So it's only going to be an hour-long stream. We're not going to do these for very long, but that is what we're going to be doing. Now, why are we doing these streams? Well, that's because of this thing here. That's the subscriber number to our YouTube channel. And since we're getting very close to that 200,000 subscriber mark, we thought, well, why not celebrate and do a live stream? This is what you guys voted for. We ran a poll, who wants to see what, and this is what happened. So there were a lot of people who voted to see me dancing in just dancing. That video you can find if you head on over to Dungeon Fog YouTube channel and check out their April Fool's video. So there you go. For the rest of us mere mortals who don't want to be traumatized for life, well, let's get on with our stream. So there are a couple of things that I want to get through first and see, just sort of work our way through. So the 4 weeks that I will be doing these streams for are a prelude to a new series that will be kicking off on Thursday nights. Yes, I know I made mistakes on dates and stuff, but nonetheless, on Thursday nights, which you are the first to learn the name of, aside from a small group of friends. And it's simply called How to Be a Great GM Presents Training Grounds. Training Grounds. That's all I'm going to say for now. But in the next week or so, you're going to start to see information coming out as to what that is. I happen to be incredibly excited for it. I cannot wait to see how this goes. We've got already people that are interested in this whole thing. So I think you're going to enjoy it. I think you're going to find it informative. I think you're going to find it entertaining. I think you're going to learn from it. It's exactly what we are. It's what we are all about on this channel. And so I'm really, really excited about that. I'm also excited that, for some of you that don't know, I got taken off of dairy about a month and a half ago. Those of you who've watched these live streams before know that chocolate milk or banana milk is basically the whole reason for living. So I have not been on any of that because it contains dairy. And today I thought, you know what, first stream, we're celebrating coming together again, which has been quite some time. So let me try something a little different. So I have here, I haven't tried it yet, a glass of chocolate milk that doesn't contain any dairy. It's called chocolate oat milk. And we're going to give that a try and just see what happens. Just see what happens during the show, just to keep me sane. Okay, so let's move forward. Let's talk about campaign creation. Now, if you haven't seen my video from earlier on this week that launched on Monday, I suggest that you're going to have a look at the reasoning behind that, and to have an idea of what I'm going to be talking about. A brief recap. When we are creating campaigns, there are a lot of different ways about trying to generate the idea. And of course, I've written that book, How to Create Epic Campaigns. It didn't really touch too much on how to come up with that original idea, that first idea. So we use the premise of what if. And the premise that I postulated in the video on Monday was, what if a world existed that was a dumping ground for other worlds? So someone very wittily and technically historically accurately pointed out Australia during the Victorian time period was used as a dumping ground for criminals and things. They sent them as far away as they could. And so something similar to that, but different as well. So in my mind, I said, okay, well, what if there was this world where characters were just dumped there? Now, I'm not talking about one of those genre crossovers where you get robots being dumped with aliens being dumped with medieval peasants. I'm not talking about that. I am very much a genre purist personally when it comes to games and things, and I like to keep it that way. But what if there was a space, what if there was a place, a planet that literally one world went, we are going to dump all of our orc war prisoners there. We're going to dump all of our orc war prisoners, or we're going to dump our mages, or we're going to dump this, we're going to dump that. In other words, what if there was a world where we kind of had a survival type thing? Now, survival games are very big currently. Everyone's trying to play different survival games, things like that, where people are trying to do different things but primarily survive. Almost a post-apocalyptic setting, if you like, as I'm sort of thinking about this. So when we start to look at our campaign idea, we have to start to analyze it in terms of why would someone want to play in this campaign in the first place? What are we offering them? Well, what really is this setting going to be in the first place? What is the whole idea? The concept of being dumped onto a planet. Let's unpack that for a little bit. So you are, let's say, an adventurer or not even an adventurer. You are a criminal. You are tried by the magistrate, some mage or other, or a judge, and you are deemed to be of no value. So you are exiled to this place. I've given it the name of Archer Valos. I was playing around with various ideas, arcane, an asylum, and with asylum came Arkham Asylum, and then Arka Valos, Valos coming from valor or trying to recover valor or valiant types of things, trying that sort of idea out. So we get Arka Valos. That was how I got to that name, if you're curious. And I said, okay, all right, so you're a criminal, you get sent to this teleportation gate, and it sends you to this planet. And you fall down onto this planet, which I realize also, now that I'm thinking about it, is the premise for the film Predators, which was the third or fourth Predator film. I forget now, excluding Aliens vs. Predator and Aliens vs. Predator 2. Then there was Predators, which is the one where the guys get dumped on a planet and ammunitions get dropped around them. I actually thought it was quite a nice one with Adrian Brody as the lead there. I actually enjoyed that film, to be honest with you. I must watch it again, actually. Nonetheless, so we have these characters who get dropped onto this planet. And I think that, yeah, it's about trying to decide if that is going to work for us. Now, Plastic Man 01 on Twitch has asked the very, very relevant question. Is this Dungeons & Dragons or something else? So, for the purposes of this particular stream, I think that we will say that it is a fantastic setting and that it could work for Dungeons & Dragons. It could work for Dungeoneer. It could work for any fantasy kind of base, because all that we need, our MacGuffin, our hook, is effectively you get dumped on the planet somehow. Erok von Roxalot, absolutely. There was a wonderful film with Ray Liotta in it called No Escape that came out in, I want to say, the early 2000s about a prison planet. You've also got Kurt Russell did about 20,000 movies in that same time period. Escape from Los Angeles, Escape from New York, Escape, the lesser known one, Escape from Vermont. I mean, there were all these different sort of escape froms, get away from penal colonies. So yes, it's an idea of this place, this place that characters cannot escape from. So we then sit back and we say, okay, so what are they going to be doing there? Why are our players going to want to play in that game? What are we offering them? Well, we're offering them the opportunity to survive and to build a colony. I think that's what we're offering them. Because if you look at all of these films, even if you look at the Mad Max films, which is to a large degree, not the first one, but the second and the third one, and the fourth one, it's about surviving some kind of collapse of civilization. Because as I was working on the image for the opening and for this the rest of the software that I'm going to be using. I had these ideas of these stone portals just hanging in the sky, reminding people that they are aliens that have been put here. And I use the term aliens in terms of not being local to the planet, that have been put here. And that those portals you can't get to. Or even if you could get to them, they only work one way. Or perhaps not one way. I mean, that's something that we will have to decide. Sammy Critfiddle points out, not potential. Is there a potential way of escaping? Well, in theory, if we are following a traditional narrative, one of your campaigns could very well be to escape. But I kind of feel like that's a very, very standard kind of film, kind of narrative, kind of story, that they will eventually escape. Our hero PCs will find a way. We certainly could do that. We certainly could do that. Now, another great example, the original Aboriginal says it's kind of like Mass Effect Andromeda. Sorry, I can't say that combination of words without dying a little bit inside. Why? I need chocolate milk. I need chocolate milk. It's not bad. So oat milk, chocolate milk is not terrible. It's not bad. I'll say that much. Okay. It's not bad. It's not true chocolate milk, but then again, it's not made out of milk, so of course it's not going to be. Anyway, okay, sorry. Back to the point. Yes, Mass Effect Andromeda, I think, is an excellent example of what we mustn't do, and we have the advantage of not having budget chiefs who are saying you're taking too long, you're taking this, you're taking that. We need to cut costs. So we're only going to have like 3 alien species and a whole new galaxy. Whereas in all of the previous trilogies, we've had dozens and dozens and dozens of. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is that we're making this planet and we need to populate it with things that are going to make sense. Now, I have been doing something with Patreons called the Ring World, which is where we're creating a world. So we're not creating a campaign, we're creating an entire world, and we're evolving the species and things that are happening there. And so that's kind of what we're trying to do there. We're not going to do that here. We're designing a campaign here. So we're still unpacking these elements, these aspects of it. So what are our characters going to do there? Are they going to be trying to escape? Or are they going to be trying to survive? And I kind of feel like the surviving factor is more interesting. Where they go, you know what, we left that planet, and that planet was ruled by an evil person, or it was ruled by a good person, or it doesn't really matter. At the moment, we will come back to it. But I feel like our campaign should be about the players realizing that what they have here is way better than what they had there. I think that's a good idea. So I think that's what we should do. If you can disagree with me, chat is running and I'm reading it. So disagree with me. I would be happy. You guys are an excellent sounding board in this case. So another question, again from Sammy Critfiddle, which was a good question, is who's running this place and transporting people to it? Well, I think the idea is there's no one running this place. And I think that's what makes it so interesting for us, is that whereas we take something like No Escape with Ray Liotta, there were 2 camps. There was the insane camp run by one of the greatest villains, I think, of all time. He was absolutely awesome. And then you have the good camp, the people who are just getting on with it and trying to survive. We can have that, but we can push it so much further. I mean, look at 13th Warrior with old Antonio Banderas. The first time I watched that film, I hated it. The second time I watched it, I went, this is brilliant, this is lovely. So we can do that in terms of bringing in these elements. So we have one group of survivors who are trying to survive. We have one group who are raiders, but they're known quantity. And then we have other groups, these roving bands of man-eaters and things that are going to be roving through the countryside. all of this is great, and it's all good for us to think about, but we also have to think about, again, why do the players want to be in there? What are they going to do about it? Why are they there? So, Volkerdog, thank you very much for that. I really appreciate your comments about the camera setup. I do appreciate that, so thank you. So yeah, why? Again, why? Another question, Arok von Rockeslot says, would there be a hierarchy of prisoners already there, or are we pioneering prisoners? That's, again, an excellent idea. An excellent idea. That's a good question. Are the player characters the first ones to arrive, or they're already arriving in something? I think they need to arrive in something personally, because again, it is an idea. Okay, there are things here that we need to ingratiate ourselves with. And I think the idea that there are these different camps is going to be really powerful, allowing our player characters to move between different camps, to work with each other, to understand how the politics is working. Because again, that gives our players the opportunity of saying, well, go and start your own one. Or go and work with these ones to defeat those ones. Or form alliances, form groups together. It gives us that opportunity. We could draw a book from Star Trek and take Star Trek Voyager, where it's a case of the PCs arrive with one piece of knowledge, that there is one gate on the planet that has an exit. That's something that the PCs could have as knowledge. Or if we really want to make the entire campaign about trying to get out, then there is someone on the planet who knows where an exit is. Something to think about. But again, not so much. So we have to look at our group. We have to decide who our group is going to be in terms of our players, and we need to decide whether they are the first ones there and they are discovering and exploring. There was a very it was a good idea, badly executed show called Terra Nova, which was a bunch of humans that got transported back into the Jurassic Age. And instead of giving us Dinotopia, they gave us, I'm not sure what they gave us, to be honest with you. I think that we saw like 3 dinosaurs in total, which was very sad. But yeah, so something along those lines. I think that's Terra Nova was getting so much better towards the end, and then they got cancelled, of course, so it's too late by then. All right. Assuming that our players are going to want to build up a base, they're going to want to do something. Someone's been mentioning that there are campaigns out there about building and gathering stuff. So something that we need to put in the back of our minds, whatever role-playing system we're going to be using, whether it's Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder or whatever, we will need to add in a module that will allow for the player characters to make stuff. Because whatever role-playing system you're using, it will most likely have like a craft skill. Or it might not. As Dead Aussie Gamer, hey Michael, points out, it's Ark, the role-playing game. To a degree, yes. So if it's going to be that the players need to build walls and defensive camps and collect stuff and etc., there are systems out there that allow you to simulate that, but they're more focused on that than on the role-playing side of things. I, of course, absolutely love the idea of the players building their own base, because it means that they are going to get so absorbed into the space. They're going to want to design stuff. They're going to want to use stuff. They're going to go and try and find stuff that will make it work. Now, a lot of people have been throwing out these really cool ideas of ancient civilizations that were here before. Why not? I mean, what we could do is you then start looking at, spoiler alert if you haven't watched it yet, The Expanse. And you go, hang on a moment, we're using these portals, but no one knows who built them. Someone else built them. And why would they link all of these portals to this planet and then stop using them if the humans or the original powers didn't originally build them? I like that. And I also don't think we need to answer those questions, not yet anyway. If the player characters start to investigate that, then by all means we can start to develop it. So this is the other thing that I think is very important, is we've got all of these great ideas floating around in our heads, but we need to start to solidify stuff. We need to start locking stuff down. Now, there's some other great questions coming through. Does magic work here? Yes, I feel that magic should work here. And I immediately hear you saying, but then the PCs will fly up to those portals. That's fine. The portals only work one way. So they're not, as someone pointed out, they're not really stargates where you can dial a number and get back home. They are one-way drop chutes, which when they open, you can't just push through. That's a great adventure. The players they build a wooden tower 500 feet up into the air, and they've spent adventures trying to get wood and this and that and the next thing. And as they get there, someone falls through and they touch the portal and nothing happens. They can't go through. So I think that would be something that would be really, really interesting for them to find out. Formlex says, what if they send a bunch of criminals there just to test if it's habitable? Well, again, that's a great idea. And I think what you would do is, in this case, our character's starting point would be, if our players like a challenge, maybe they are pioneers and they're going out first. If our player characters are more, I would say, emotionally attuned and like to build into NPCs and things, then I would have them arriving after a few years of this a few years after everything has been happening. So there are these colonies that they can start investing into. Because the other thing that we have to bear in mind is, what if a player character dies? Where is another player character going to come from? In normal circumstances, it's just a case of roll up a character, and then off you go. You just are in the next tavern. There aren't next taverns, which is another great question that we need to look at too, which I think is quite fun. Now, the next question: if they are falling out of these portals, how do they survive? How do they survive the fall? Well, I would say that that's part and parcel of the delivery system, and could be the first clue as to what these portals originally were used for. If they fall out of the portal and they land, say, let's say 30 or 40 or 60 feet down, which is not very high, we might need to make it higher, then either they take 10d6 damage. No, I don't think we're going to do that, or whatever your system's damage would be. Maybe as they fall out, they land, and there is a moment where they float to the ground. So there is definitely a mechanism which, again, would indicate that these portals were not designed as execution points, but very specifically as delivery points. Do you see how important it is for us to start unpacking all these questions? And I love how this whole idea is formulating and growing as we talk about it. And that's the important thing. I have the benefit of having all of you folks contributing. But when you're on your own, you have the benefit of being able to sit there on your own and work out what's going on. So let's say, for example, that these portals are dumping people there. Magic works. Except, think about this. Even if the colonies have been going for 100 years, perhaps there's no library. There are no spell books. So player characters that arrive, if they're level 1 or whatever the system is, they're going to have the spells that they had, and then there's no more. So you go, well, that's unfair. Why would then anyone ever play a spellcaster? And that's a good question. Why would anyone ever play a spellcaster? You have to answer these questions to make sure that is what is fair. So mages are going to have limited access to spells. So do players not to play mages? Or do you try and add in this ancient technology, this ancient, not technology, but this ancient civilizations where there are crypts that have ancient scrolls on them which do contain magic spells? That could be very interesting. Especially if, as the players land, for the first time they level up, the mage is like, hey, can I get some spells? Nope. You didn't find any spell books. There aren't any spell books to copy from. You are one of the only mages as far as you know. Okay, where on earth am I going to get this information from? Well, I have heard rumor of a tomb filled with scrolls, but it's guarded, and suddenly you have an adventure. Fighters, yes, SN8015 says don't have any weapons, and there's no smith. Well, again, absolutely right. Now, what we do is we lean on games like Ark or what's the new one that's just come out? Valheim or Vanaheim. And you go, well, how do you start there? Well, you start with gathering branches and building spears, and then ever so slowly you miraculously can start mining iron. Well, how did our ancestors do it? So we start to follow those processes and we start to build those in. We will have to handhold our players. Not a lot of players have survival skills and wouldn't be able to describe that kind of stuff. And again, I don't think that that is something that we want to really focus on. I think that is something that is flavorful and that will add to it. So I would almost be inclined to say, okay, our first point of order in terms of this whole space, I think, given how we are talking about adventures to go and find scrolls, adventures to try and get to these portals, adventures to try and pacify other groups, because we haven't spoken about the locals yet. Some people have been talking about that. They've been saying, okay, well, what about the locals? We haven't been talking about the locals yet. Okay, that's also an interesting question. What about the local people and that sort of thing? So I think we've got enough adventures here, potentially, for at the very least a little, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe 10 adventures. That's a campaign. There's no rule saying a campaign has to be X length, etc., etc. So I think there's definitely something here that's interesting. Sorcerers, in D&D anyway, will have an advantage because, and warlocks as well. Can they contact their patrons? What about priests? What about priests? Now, I was lucky enough to play in a game with Dead LZ Gamer, as a matter of fact, called Apocalypse Now, which was a very interesting post-apocalyptic game where they had broken down scavenging into currency. So you could scavenge basic parts, and it could take an hour, and you would scavenge basic parts, and then you would, let's say you got 5 basic parts, you could then make stuff out of these basic parts. You could then scavenge from more complicated stuff, so if you found an old wreck, or in our case, if you found an ancient civilized structure, you could take complex parts from that, and you could make complex things out of that. And then you would have lists of what is a simple thing and what is a complex thing and what components do you need. I thought that was very elegant. So we're going to steal that and use that in our campaign. Why not? It's a brilliant idea. So let's do something along those lines. The player character needs to spend, let's say, an hour, just 1 hour. And the character earns, let's say, 5, and we'll figure out names and stuff later on, 5 components. We'll call them components. The 5 components, you can build an axe or a wagon. No, not a wagon. But you get my idea. A wall might take 20 components. So what then becomes important, right, if we continue to do this, is you say, right, time is a factor. So a lot of people are saying maybe the gods aren't there. Okay, that's fine. You would have to tell your players, don't play priests, you won't have a divine connection. Some people are talking about this planet is surrounded by a void. That's really cool. I do like that. Formlex says warlocks have pacts with viruses. Maybe, but we don't really want to change the basic mechanics. If you're going to cut something out of your campaign, you have to let your players know beforehand. We have to do a primer, and we will be doing a primer as well. Okay, so time is important for us. If we're going to have our salvage system is important if we want our players to survive. So we know that those are integrated with each other. When we talk about the planet itself, our player characters don't have sailing ships to sail all around the world in. They just don't have it. It doesn't exist. So we don't have to worry about designing an entire planet. Even if mages somehow get some kind of teleportation thing, is that really going to get them over a huge amount of distances? It doesn't matter. It's not going to be relevant to our lives, I don't think. So that's something to bear in mind. Erok says, evil factions would surely set up camps around those portals just for recruitment or food. Of course they would. Absolutely. Evil camps would set up around those portals. But I think we could probably have one portal per 100 miles. And those camps, they wouldn't be able to travel 100 miles. And I can tell you why. If we look at our history, we go, one of the most well-trained armies in terms of endurance running were the Zulu warriors. And they could run flat out for a day, but they could only cover a distance of about 100 kilometers, which is, 50 miles, 60 miles. So a 100-mile radius would put most of those portals out of touch of most people, I think. So, yes, you would have some, and I think the player groups could very easily come across one portal from one planet, because this is my thinking, is that each portal is linked to a specific planet. So you would know, oh, from that portal, that's where people from planet Sudian come from, just pulling names randomly from the chat. Those people generally arrive with spellbooks because they're a very magical-based group of individuals. We got to get to them. Except they're surrounded by a camp of pilferers and thieves who use the books as firewood because they don't care about that stuff. They just care about... I think there's another great adventure for us. And that gets me going, aha, I like that. Roman Wolf 007 says Stargate. Yes, but only one way. Only one way. There is no way of getting it back. Aboriginal, yes, planet Braxia. We could have Sagetti elves falling into this portal. I think that could be fun. Serpent's Embrace 2, what exactly is the premise? The premise is a planet that is used as a dumping ground by hundreds or potentially thousands of other worlds just to dump people in there that they don't want. So that's an idea. More McCheese. Cheese. I'm going to have some chocolate milk. More McCheese says, what if the portals are from pantheons of other worlds? This world sits in a spot where it's almost a nexus of different realities and the different god pantheons trying to extend their influence into this new realm. They've been fighting for this realm for ages, and the PCs are just new recruits in their efforts. We certainly could go with that route as well, deciding how or why people are brought here. And you go, okay, well, yes, absolutely, we can certainly do that. Ancient hungry dragons or creatures from the hells, says Cyril9847. Yes, this is it. This is what is so interesting. I think, is that the Ottawin portal, says Jack of Mines. Correct. We can bring in from wherever we like, which I think is quite a fun thing to look at. Let's look at the planet for a moment. And I always like to create a map when talking about the planet. We have spoken about the fact that we don't need people to travel very far in this space. So we will need some kind of ancient map that we can use. More for referencing ourselves than anything else, and I think now more for demarcating territorial control of spaces. So if we make a map, I think that's going to be our primary focus, is working out the different regions. I did want to show you, because a lot of people ask me this question, so give me a second here. Oops, wrong button. Hopefully I'm still streaming. Yep. I did want to show you some software. I have been promoting it forever because it works beautifully, in my opinion. This is Deos from Dungeon Fog crew. And if we create a new map, this is still an alpha, by the way, folks. So it really is a new piece of software, which may or may not work. So I can zoom out. There's another update. No, we don't install it just yet. We're going to use the old version. So what I like about this as a map designing tool is, let's say we know we don't have to do the whole world, right? We know that. So I'm just going to draw a space here. Let me, my brush is set at 25, so that's fine. So I'm going to draw out a continent here and say, right, there is my continent. And let's put in another continent that the players can see. We'll put in some waters here so they could cross it in a boat of some kind. You know, when you're looking at these kind of campaigns where you say, you are dumped here, the players might say, well, we're going to find a way out. So then as your seed, you say, well, there is a place that I know of that has a portal which supposedly leads off of here, but it is on the other land and you cannot get there. And the players journey to the edge of the coast and they look across and they go, yeah, we're never going to get... Oh, but there is a pass. There is a passage further south through the cannibal territories that will allow us to go. You know, all that kind of wonderful stuff. Yeah, we could put in a continent up here and say, blah, 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 there's a continent. This is really the basic kind of planning. But what I like is let's just put in a little island here. Okay. There's a little island. Now I'm going to zoom in to this place, he said, hopefully. I'm going to zoom into this little space and let's see what our little island looks like. Okay, so here we are. Now we are at basic sort of scale. So that little island is actually quite big and this continent has suddenly become very large. I'm going to throw down a mountain quickly. Let me just grab a mountain here. And I have a point to make with all of this, by the way. So here's a nice mountain. Thank you very much. I'm just going to put you over there. And I'm going to put down a mountain range. Clink. There we go. So here is a random... let's just do that. I'm going to grab a whole bunch of mountains and just say, okay, here's our mountain range. This looks awful, by the way, and I wouldn't use this particular style, but I just want to prove a point here. This is why I think Deus is going to be really useful for campaign designing in the future. There we go. I've thrown some mountains down. I'm going to zoom in some more so we can actually get to the scale that we would normally be working in. So now you can see the scale that we would normally be working at for this kind of map, I guess. We would have a mountain range that looks something like this. I'm just going quickly here in terms of what I'm doing. Oh, let's not move the continent. So yes, this is potentially gigantic. And as our players wander around, you look at this and you go, yeah, sure, you have a whole world to explore, buddies. We're still zooming. We're still zooming. Yes. So I'm not going to advocate that you would ever draw this entire map. You don't need to. Not for what we're doing with this case. We're saying, okay, each square represents, let's say, and I'm talking about these squares. You look at this kind of mountain and you go, okay, I think each square is going to be about 5 or 6 miles, give or take. Something like that. Maybe even a bit more. I don't know, depending. So we don't need to develop too much. We just need to develop the area that's important. Now, a traditional method would be to have this line of mountains form a natural barrier that our players can't get across. And rumors that on the other side, in a desert or in a whatever we want to do, on the other side, there's a civilization that has magic, they have steel, they have all of the stuff that our players might be wanting. Or they might not. I mean, it's just a rumor, right? So again, how do we keep our players engaged? How we keep them hooked is by creating these rather dramatic spaces, creating some interesting little valleys here. Now, if you've been listening to my podcasts that I do on a weekly basis for my Patreons, I've been talking about how civilizations grow and start according to some populist theories. The mountain ranges that I'm currently designing here, by creating very strong horizontal mountains, it is going to create some very interesting problems for people, as well as having a strong vertical mountain as well is going to create issues for the players. They don't know it yet, but they are going to suffer from it. Okay, so we would design some kind of map, right? And we can figure out where it's going from there. Cyril 9847, is this Azeroth with Kalimdor? No, it's not. It's just random drawing, and we can go in here and refine the hell out of it so that it doesn't look anything like what you're talking about. You don't want that, by the way. If your players sit back and go, oh, this is from Warcraft. No, it's not from Warcraft. This is something that we've made ourselves. Okay. So there are Laura Bones in chat. Thank you, Laura Bones. Cyril, I know it's a joke. I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay. So we would design our world planet, and that allows us to then start doing stuff. Now, unfortunately, I haven't made a world planet before the stream started. I didn't think we were going to get this far in the stream, as a matter of fact. So creating out this basic kind of world, what I was talking about is saying, okay, let's start to populate it with our own species. Again, we go back to that question, what or who lives here, and why does that make it fun and entertaining? If our players are being dragged away from their fantasy world, which I would say, for argument's sake, could almost be a stock standard fantasy world, there are some things that we might want to try and avoid. One of the big things for me when we're looking at campaign design is trying to say, well, why aren't we just playing in an established campaign world? I created my world of Braxia many, many, many years ago, decades ago now. Why don't I just go back there? Why bother creating dozens and dozens and dozens of new worlds? Well, I think it's because we can, point number one, but also because it allows us to explore different ideas. So what if in this world that we are busy manufacturing here, our locals are maybe more in tune with their environment? So I'm thinking possibly something like wood elves. I don't want to say that this is going to be Avatar with giant blue creatures running around. I really don't want us to talk about that necessarily. But what can we make or place in this world that's going to make it not feel like a fantasy world? In the traditional sense, because it isn't. It's very rustic. I see some people are talking about druids. That's not a terrible idea. We could have some civilizations that have got iron. Again, if we give technology to a civilization, we have to make sure that we have a very good reason why that civilization isn't trying to take over these individuals. So think about it. If the Roman Empire suddenly had these portals appear and criminals start dropping out of these portals, you can be damn sure they would send a large force to get in there and to start trying to stop that from happening. But if we have more historical druids that are, as the original Aboriginal is saying, where they are more about keeping the land, that sort of thing, that could certainly work. They're maybe not going to be so militant. So we can do that. Which one or which option gives us more adventures? It's a buzzword that I go back to every single time. Which one gives us more options and more adventures? So I'm going to actually stop doing this map because as pretty as it's already starting to look, it's distracting me as I'm trying to plot out little valleys. So what I'm purposefully doing here is assuming that our players are going to start in this particular area of the map. I'm creating these little valleys. So each valley, like we said, each grid is what, 5 miles in distance. So by creating a singular mountain spine, it cuts off the coastal lands to the other lands. And I'm building in little passes here. This is still the alpha, by the way. I see there's a question there. What software is this? If you head on over to dungeonfog.com and you look for Deos, you'll find that this is the Deos software. It is still in alpha, so there is still a lot of work to be done on this. I'm just using it because I like the idea, particularly for the stream, of showing scale on a real scale. A lot of fantasy maps, you'd have a continent, you'd have one giant mountain range, whereas here we can go all the way out, and say, well, yeah, that mountain range that you were designing, it's insignificant from a world perspective, but from a player perspective, it's super significant. So what I was talking about, thanks Laura Bones, is creating these little valleys. So valleys are really useful in terms of creating controllable zones, defendable zones. So this valley here that I've just sort of made, we might refine that a bit more, open it out a little bit more, make it a bit more of an obvious valley. But you've got this valley here, which runs down to the coast, and you've got this little valley here. Let's actually make it a bit more obvious there. These valleys I would start to populate with people. Now, what I also am advocating now very much on the channel and moving forward is that, okay, so we've got a whole bunch of little valleys. I have a spare mountain. Anyone need a mountain? Let's put you in there. I can obviously go and select more mountain samples as well, because there's only a few here drawn by a very talented artist, Kaora. Okay, so we've got some valleys happening and some mountains, and I think that's great. We don't need to spend too much more time playing with this. We'll then fill it up with trees and rivers and that sort of thing. Rivers are very important, obviously. Rivers are important because they allow us to survive, to get fresh water, something that's very, very, very important for human survival. So putting in some rivers would be really useful. And so I'm just using this old technique to create some rivers. We'll put a river there. This valley will have a river which flows this way. Rivers also form natural borders, which is great. So we'll do a river there, and let's have another river coming out of here. Let's make this like a swampland, and then we'll do a river there, and let's have another little river here, which joins this one, so it becomes bigger. So we're doing stuff like that. Okay, so I think that starts to give us a sense of our zones, and this would be more than enough for us to start playing. I think that something that we tend to do as world creators and as campaign creators is we try to create too much detail, and we get overwhelmed by it. So I'm going to create a little forest in here. So there's a forest there, and let's have some forest here. We want forested areas, we want plains areas, we want a nice mix. I would say that this would be possibly the easy start zone. So again, I'm always talking about taking your players into account. If you have players who are survivalists, who actually want to get stuck in and to really play a game and thoroughly get into this whole notion, then I would start them in a swamp. I would start them in a difficult area. And why are swamps difficult? Fire. Fire is impossible in a swamp. Well, it's not impossible, but it's very difficult in a swamp. So you could put in fire. Now, there are obviously certain classes that are going to excel. If we're talking Dungeons and Dragons, rangers, druids, that sort of thing, will excel because they naturally have survival crafts and can track and survive in the wilderness and that kind of stuff. So yes, there is definitely that. I'm not saying that isn't going to be a factor. Again, I think our crafting system where you spend an hour foraging regardless of your class. I know someone suggested that maybe your class determined what you could find. So wizards would be more inclined to find bark or papyri or something along those lines, whereas fighters might find more hardy woods or plants or be able to carry more. I mean, we can go into that. That to me is the finessing that we would have in terms of that. Mages could find minerals. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could do whatever you like. If your players are not diehard survivalists, then I wouldn't start them in a swamp. I would start them in a more neutral environment where they have a chance of surviving, or within a good camp, perhaps, for example, or near a camp of good people. I think the other thing to bear in mind as well, of course, is once your players have kind of landed, they need to have some goals, and they might not necessarily have those goals straight off the bat. You might need to give them goals. Again, it depends on your players and how accustomed they are to survival style play. And I also would make damn sure that my first few adventures, the first one would be survive. So they drop out into this place. We want to establish that there are good people and there are bad people. So when we look at our rule, our rules for narrative say that we need to introduce our players to our baddies. Now, I don't think that we need to have a single big bad. I don't think this needs to be an epic campaign. I think this needs to be a player-based campaign, or at the very least episodic. So by episodic, I mean it's 1, 1, 1, 1. The adventures are not linked to each other. It's just one adventure after another. This lends itself to that perfectly. By player-based, it means taking our players' backstories and working them through here. Now, obviously, we're not going to be able to say, oh, there's a letter from your mother. Maybe she threw it through the portal and that got carried from person to person until it eventually found the player character. That would be mind-blowingly amazing from a difficulty perspective, and it would certainly put a lot of weight onto that adventure. Would it be the right thing to do? Well, once, yes, but not for many more things. So I think building up a player character type of situation, type of campaign with an episodic nature would be really strong here. You could have a big bad, and the big bad could be the people who threw them here. Absolutely. You know, you can definitely go along those lines, I think. But I kind of feel episodic here would work really, really well. I see a couple of people are commenting on the Lorica segmentata. That's the Roman armor that is behind me. Yes, that I used to wear in the shows. Nice little replica armor there. So yeah, we can certainly do that. Now, okay. Where was I? Right, we're nearly at the end of the stream for tonight. I'm only doing an hour. I know I should do more, but I'm only doing an hour. So we have our map. Now it's just a case of deciding who's going to go where. We need to start talking about the creatures that are going to be living here. I know we sort of said maybe druids. We said something along those lines. I kind of feel that the races that are on the planet, if you think about it, if this planet has been used for a long time, let's just zoom in here. How close can we go? Okay, we can, oh, not that button. Suddenly forest, because the GM scrolled right. Yeah, so that's full magnification, by the way. So we can get some pretty finesse detailing in there. And if you look at that and you go, okay, now each block is a mile. That's a lot of space that we've got to play. That is a lot of space that we've got to play in. Okay. All right. So let's forget about the map for now. I will export it later. The races that we're going to have on this planet, I feel like they could be amalgams. So we're going to start giving our players clues, right? And if it's been going for a while, I would say that the dominant species that lives in the area that the players start in anyway, it would be really cool if they were like a hybrid. So they are standing about 5 foot tall. They're very muscular. They're slightly green with elf-pointed ears. They are in tune with nature, but maybe they have quite ornate beards. So in other words, it's a human who, coupled with an orc, who coupled that progeny, then coupled with elves or dwarves or gnomes, and so you start to get this ball of race all combined into one. And I think that could be a nice way of saying this planet has been going for a long time, and people have been forced to cohabit and forget all of the animosity of the past. Forget all of that sort of stuff. We are now all working together. And that, I love subverting those expectations. So when they come across this kind of orcish thing, they're not sure what it is. My father's father was an orc. My father's mother's mother was an elf, or this or that. I think that could be quite a nice testimony to say that this has been going on for a long time. I would be against, or not against, I would have perhaps certain groups that have decided to stick together. So an elvish group that has broken away and lives in the mountains and hoards all of their knowledge. a map of the region, that sort of thing. Again, a lovely opportunity, I think, for an adventure. And the player characters discovering, oh yeah, no, the elves have got a map of the region, and that will show you where one of the portals is. Could be something along those lines. I wouldn't have major cities. I would have smaller cities. Or not even cities. I would have little hamlets, little villages with walls around them. Definitely. I'm thinking perhaps the Norman era, where you've got a motte and bailey, and that's about it. I don't think anything further. Or where you have individuals that have taken over ruins from previous civilizations, and they've fortified those ruins. I think that would be a great thing. So I think in our next stream, which will be next week, Wednesday, same time, same channels, what we're going to look at is we're going to look at now developing the ideas towards the space, because that's all we need to do, and then we're basically nearly there to start playing. We know what we've got. I think it's really exciting where we are at the moment. I think in terms of the animals, I see SN8015 says, yeah, what about animals? I see lots of votes for kobolds. We'll include kobolds, don't worry. We'll include kobolds somehow. I think that definitely will be brought in without a doubt. So yes, we will look at that. Gewelwyn, the antagonistic force. Oh, there are lots of antagonistic forces, and that's something that we're going to have to look at as well in terms of this campaign. Is this sort of survival thing? This idea of how do our characters survive and make a success of it. All in all, I think as a campaign, I don't see this as being something that's going to run on for years and years and years, unless we really want to develop the cultures and the PCs have some kind of major impact. I think if the PCs have the ability to forge a kingdom, that would be amazing. But again, I feel like that's a little bit too advanced for what we're trying to do here. I think that's too big a campaign, and we don't have to worry about that. We're not planning on that. We remember our goal is 10 sessions, 10 adventures, I should say, not 10 sessions, 10 adventures in this space. So I think we've got a pretty good start. Anyway, thank you all for tuning in and for watching. I believe that there are some streams happening from some other wonderful folks, which we need to show some love on. I don't have Twitch open. I think we've got, give me a second here, we'll raid. It's either Dungeon Fog or World Anvil. See who we can show some love to. I have to make this full screen. I can't see what's going on here. Give me a second. I really thank you all for showing up. I didn't expect to see so many people here, since we haven't done a stream like this in the past few months. So I really appreciate that. Like I said, 6th of May is when Training Grounds begins. More information you can find, if I use proper English, you could find more information, I should say, on our Discord channel that will be coming up. I don't see World Anvil online. I don't see Dungeon Fog online either. So there is that, sadly. Anyone wants to make a suggestion, I'm happy to send people there. Otherwise, all of you guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again next week. And until then, I wish you all the very happiest of gaming.